music. Hello and welcome back to the Handstandcast with me, Emmet Lewis, and he is back. My illustrious co-host Mikael Christiansen is back from his production period. How is it going, Mikael?
How is it going? Yeah, it's going pretty good. Now it's a couple of weeks since we finished up the 2 weeks of residency time that we had here in Stockholm, which was a hell of a fucking ride. I must say, in all ways, shapes, and forms. It was amazing, and it was a nightmare, but it was definitely more amazing than nightmare. Or my nightmare is to
An amaze-mare.
push it. Amaze-mare, something like that.
I was kind of filling people in about how like this is the dark point before the dawn when you start getting all the tech in, all the lights and all the other stuff, and then you're like, we have nothing. But then maybe you're like, oh wait, we actually might have something. So how do you feel the show's doing? Like, how is it?
Yeah, like I mean, we really like this production period is, I think, is where things kind of finally started to fall into place. So basically, last time we were really good friends, and the group has like a really good dynamic. But when you're six people trying to create together, it's hard to make decisions on what material to keep and thematics and like all of that stuff. So last time, meaning in July, we had a guy a good friend of ours named Tom Brand. He's part of another circus company called Svalbard, and he's really an artist. And he gives a bunch of feedback and kind of pulled it apart quite a lot. So now, when we worked here in November, it was a lot kind of from what he had said and trying to create like a new cohesion of the show and like find both ourselves as individuals more in it, and finally find a way to make it so that everyone in the group kind of like, because we weren't necessarily all on the same page about most of the material before, but I think we really found that now, so that feels really good. So like I think that and the fact that we got to try a lot of stuff with music, and we had a light designer in from Denmark who designed all the lights for the show, so that was pretty fucking cool.
Yeah, nice. How do you feel like, if I was to say the Handstandcast had arranged like a stealth meeting at your premiere and everyone who listens to it was going to be in the audience judging you, how would you feel about that?
I think like that's the thing. I'm silently hopeful that we will be among the lucky ones when it comes to circus productions that will feel reasonably ready when the premiere comes. Very often, like the last couple of weeks are very scrambled, and people just throw something together to have a premiere, and like a lot of the material isn't ready and it's a bit rough and so on. And this is just a road reality of creating that. Like, you will have a time limit, you will have a date of premiere, and everything isn't necessarily exactly as you want it for the premiere. And very often, like, they can't either, since you have never actually met an audience several times in a row with a show. You haven't seen their responses, you haven't seen what actually works and so on. So like all of that stuff is, most of the time, people adjust over time as they start playing. But I do think that we can potentially have quite a high level of readiness when we move towards premiere, but we still do need like about two more weeks with the show. So like right now it's not ready to be played, but like the general overarching arc of the show and the scenes are decided upon and done. But like the kind of smaller kind of energy curvature within each scene and kind of focal points, and like both kind of like detailing movement quality and kind of theatrical expression and like specific technique and timing, and choreo, like those things needs to be polished.
Yeah.
But it got really far.
Yeah, I think a lot of the things you said there need to be polished. They're kind of the things where like you can have them mechanically drilled as much as you want going into a show, which is always very useful. But until you've actually ran the show as a cohesive all in an audience and with lights and with tech, it just doesn't get polished for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, and like it's also just like getting the feeling of playing it so that you can be in like the performative state you need to be in to make it work. And that's also something that just takes a lot of time of experiencing the material until you can actually like play it out in fullness. But like basically like our show, it's a combination of like a reasonable amount of choreography and like loads of group scenes and separated scenes where it's more kind of focused on individuals and so on. But we also operate a lot with what's called scores. Basically just a term gotten from music theory and so on, where like basically like kind of a choreographical score is a regulated improv with like an improvisation that has like a certain rule set, like you're improvising around a specific concept, and you don't move outside of those like set rules within a period of time. So we're kind of using this a lot in the show as well to also keep it alive for ourselves. So it's not just about repeating the exact same movements every single time, but like that we need to kind of reorganize around each other and kind of keep our eyes open and be sharp and be in the moment.
So what you could say is you kind of got a bit of handstand jazz going on.
Certainly, both in handstand and outside of it. But it's because like some of the stuff we do is very tightly regimented and very like basically on counts to be able to ensure that it gets the visual effects that it wants. But a lot of the times we're also looking for visual effects that we wanted to not look regimented at all. And the thing then is that set choreography, I mean, it can certainly work, but if you can build a score with a certain rule set and make that work, I usually find it more interesting both to do and to watch, since it gets kind of an organic feel to it.
Yeah,
but,
it's definitely
sorry.
It's kind of a nice like thing to have in a show. It's also one of these things. It's kind of, if a show is too tightly choreographed, then people who are performing the show, I don't know if people listening have ever done a lot of performance, but it can become a bit mechanical for the person, that they can kind of zone out and space out while they're doing it.
Yeah.
And then it's like, particularly in these kind of group shows, when you want something to be highlighted or not, and to try and keep that aliveness it's very difficult to do, particularly when you've done something like 10, 15, 20, 1,000 times.
Yeah.
So then having this kind of improv is kind of nice, because it actually kind of serves as a bit of a slap in the face to the person who now has to go and like, oh shit, you know, either the light's on me or my little trio, and we have to actually, you know, feel each other, feel what's going on, or feel the music, or feel the mood in the room, or feel the audience, and kind of zone back in on that or focus it. So it's kind of, it's quite an interesting, it's also a risky thing as well, because it's one of these things that it's there's always this idea in circus, when we're performing in circus, we're dealing with risk. We're dealing, I'm not saying other performance isn't as well, but circus deals very directly with risk. It very sets up a proposal of like, I'm going to walk across this really thin wire. I may or may not fall. I'm going to throw all these balls in the air. Hopefully I catch them. I'm going to stand on my one arm and hopefully it isn't boring.
Yeah.
And this kind of thing. And it's like,
And speaking of hoping this isn't boring, I mean, that's surely one of the challenges that we have had. And one of the ones that I wanted to challenge from the beginning with this project too was like is it possible to make a show that's like hand balancing focused that isn't boring? Because I've certainly never seen much of that, because if you try to make it into a like basically gymnastics technical skill display, like you will run out of interesting things, because you can't incrementally increase the bar of difficulty forever, and there's a heavy diminishing returns on how long it's interesting to watch a bunch of one arm handstand positions or a bunch of tricks. So we wanted to much more use the handstands as kind of like like I think I came up with this metaphor for it, like trying to use the handstands more as the canvas for the performance rather than as the painting. So
Yeah.
like that is the framework, but that doesn't like it's interesting. Like I don't do many one arms in the show, and like no one does many one arms in the show.
Yeah.
Like sure there's a bunch of one arms in the show, but like there isn't like one individual in the show doesn't do very many of them at all.
Yeah.
And it's definitely not going to be like a Pokemon of handstands, like, oh, gotta catch them all and have all of the different kind of cool tricks in there. Yeah, no, it's not like that at all. And
Jesus, I want my money back already. If I'm not going to see every single possible handstand done by everyone, like this does sound shit. Hold on, I need to play the music for that.
Oh no, have you gotten one of those? Disaster.
Told you, I got the sound pad thing. Got the sound
of
pad
course
thing.
you do, you fucker.
I just haven't loaded any good sounds onto it. There's no good sounds that go with handstands. This is my problem.
No.
So like I have people in podcast land know a roadcaster for the podcast now, and you can load it. Has sound pads and soundboards. So I've been using it for the questions. And yeah. So if people want to suggest, maybe we should get some circus music, like proper old school Entrance of the Gladiator stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe.
But yeah, I really need to tell about a couple of events that happened during our residency time. So as I said, like most of the time we were under quite like some time pressure, working both recreating choreography and working on individual scenes, working on the dramaturgy, like making sure like to fill in material where places we didn't have, and trying to find like a cohesive story. Like I don't like the word story, but trying to find some sort of like a red thread or something that makes it say something. So the musician that we had, and a guy named Jonathan Krog, who is a really good musician, and he's also an acrobat and a dancer himself. He asked us the questions. Like he said that like we should try looking upon each scene in the show as a word, and in a combination, those words become a sentence. And that's like a metaphor I like a lot. And it's of course not so that like we then literally thought of a word and then put it together to a single sentence. It's not like that. It's more just in the to have a way to kind of associate about it, and to be able to curate the impressions given to the audience, so that like I would like a show or like this like anything that I do, or any thing that I even watch, like I think it's interesting when you do see when it's associative and kind of evokes things for you, so that you're getting very clear impressions, but then you can interpret them yourselves, compared to you just get some input that can be interpreted as anything that's not as interesting. So and I neither find it so interesting when it's very clear what you're supposed to see in every single thing. So we worked a lot around that, but so we had all this conceptual work to do. We had to get time to work with our light designer, who was a fucking great guy from Denmark named Kenneth, who made some really insane lights. And really good lights is something that was really kind of something we understood earlier is really necessary to bring out the best in such a show. But in the middle of the process, like, of course, I mean, coronavirus and everything. So we had gotten everyone to come to Sweden. We had decided everyone just stays the fuck away from other people. We go into this black box where we worked, and we worked there together all day, and like everyone had a place to stay, but we would kind of stay rather secluded otherwise. And like everything was going well, and we're there in the studio, and I get a message, bam, from my flatmate, the lady who owns the apartment I live in. Bam, hi, I have COVID. And I'm like, fuck. And I just sit there and look at the text message and say, guys, my flatmate has COVID. And everyone's like, oh no. Because earlier in the process, one of the girls in the show, Lisa, she had been pretty damn sick. Her smell was gone, etc. So she hadn't been with us the first few days. She got a COVID test. She was negative. And when she had no symptoms, she resumed and came to us. One of the outside eyes, that guy Tom, he also had been sick and not feeling great, so he was also home for a few days in the beginning. Then they're back, everything's great, and then like my flat place has COVID, and we were just like, shit, what do we do? And right now there's like, for the public testing system here in Sweden, like it's just packed and fully booked. So we booked a test that's pretty expensive, but you get it really quick. So it's like 150 euros test that we booked, that I was supposed to go to like the same day, just in a few hours. But then I get called from the place where we had the residency, is a place called Subtopia in Stockholm, and they're basically like a large kind of how can I say it? Like they're kind of a cooperative of various organizations that run like a large complex of buildings, and they have, like at the time they had like this kind of what's it called? They were shooting some movie down in one of the other large studios. So somehow and for that movie, the people were being tested every single day, or like every other day or so. So they sent a nurse up. They called me and was like, "Hey, we heard your flatmate has COVID. Just stay where you are. A nurse is coming up in 10 minutes. I'm like, what? So they sent a nurse up and did that, like stabbed me in the nose with the thing, and I was negative. And then like I did take the other test the day after as well. So I was definitely negative, and we could continue the work. So that was kind of stressful. And then the truck of the light designer was suddenly gone one morning, and it was a truck full of like another show had all of its scenography in the back of that truck, and like it said kind of like scenography and blah 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 on the truck. So we were like, fuck, the truck is definitely stolen. So the entire morning went to like calling around and la la la, and then it ended up that like someone had towed it because it had stood too close to a zebra crossing, and they had to pay like 750 euros to get the fucking truck back.
Wow. So Sweden does not fuck around with zebra crossings.
So it was an eventful time to say the least. It was really fucking good, and the show will hopefully be good. But it was a thing that happened.
It was a thing that happened. Yeah, it's gonna fill people in a bit on last week's podcast on Mikael's locked out of his apartment and can't come join us because of the Rona.
Yeah, that was the thing too. Like, I mean, I had to find a new place to stay for like a week, but then I got really lucky with some friends of mine where I ended up staying. So it actually solved itself pretty well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm still it has still taken a toll on me.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say too bad, but I'm looking at a very broken Mikael when he got on the call right now.
Yeah, but that's also because I haven't slept for 2 days because my brain fucks. So rage.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds really. I'm really looking forward to it. We're having a Handstandcast fan club meetup. When do we have a fan club? Has anyone bothered to set up a fan club for us online, or do we have to do that ourselves? I'm not certain how these things work. I don't like. Do you set up your own fan club, or does someone set it up for you? But
imagine having a fan club. That would be hilarious.
I think we should. I think we deserve a fan club.
Like some fucker will meme about it, and it will be very dreadful.
Yeah. It'll just be 4 people, but it's fine. I can deal with it. Where are we at? Yeah, so that's cool. I'm trying to think if anything I want to ask. But yeah, the fan club is meeting at the premiere, wherever that happens. If you're ever allowed out of Sweden again, because Sweden's Corona strategy seems to be tanking. You gone or?
No, I'm here.
Okay, good. Sorry, I just couldn't hear you. That's fine. Yeah, so we're going to do a bit of a Q&A around about. These are some of the questions that I think I answered in the last Q&A as well, but I'd actually want to get your thoughts on it too.
Okay.
But first, we have an audio question, which is always awesome. So, as usual, if you want to ask us questions, please send them to @handstandfactory on Instagram or to me or Mikael directly. If you want to do a voice question or do a dial in for us, go to Anchor FM and you can find our link through our website, handstandfactory.com. You can send us questions there. So we have a audio question. So let's hit it.
Hi, Emmet and Mikael. This is Brian from Oregon. I have a question and a comment. I'm working the push program, and I got to say the focus on vertical pushing has been the antidote to my climbers pulling shoulders, and my shoulder discomfort really has disappeared by working on the push program. So thank you. And then my question relates to breathing in the straight body position, or really any position I'm in where I'm contracting the abdominals. It's been hard to find a balance between that slightly restricted breathing that I get while I'm bracing versus just inevitably running out of breath around 30 seconds into a hold. So any cues, tips, or anything else that you can offer for me to work on this is greatly appreciated. Thanks again.
Yeah. I have a very clear suggestion. Stop bracing. I barely know any people anymore that brace their abdominals during handstands. So
I think it's one of these myths we have to destroy, but it gets reinforced by gymnastics, obviously, because they need the body tension for certain things, and CrossFit as well, and general handstand coaching. So yeah, the goal of handstand is to be relaxed, and to be able to breathe relaxed is part of being relaxed. So being tense and developing body tension it's a good strategy when you're learning, when you're doing a wall holds, when you're just trying to find the groove. But yeah, as Mikael says, don't.
Yeah, I think try to look upon your handstand as much as you can as the same as standing on your feet, and there is never any reason to brace your abs when you stand on your feet, while there is a reason to brace your abs if you're doing a heavy squat. And you could sort of compare that to doing a handstand press. And just as when you're doing a squat, like if you have a heavy barbell and you start bending your knees, like the amount of then you're going to have quite a lot of abdominal tension, depending on the weight you carry, of course. But it's not like you need to think particularly extra on what's going on in your midsection. Like your body's smart, and it will respond by tensing up there, and that's the same as will happen in a press to handstand in a sense. So I mean, the analogy isn't perfect, but yeah, it still holds up to a degree, and particularly when standing on your feet, you don't need to do anything with the midsection in terms of like conscious tensing of it to keep yourself to standing, and it should be this more or less the same in handstand. So like the breathing thing is like it's kind of a shallow breathing that happens in handstand. That like you don't allow your rib cage to expand and contract very much, and neither your abdominals. But think about how you breathe when you sit on the couch. You don't really allow your rib cage or your abdominals to expand and relax particularly much either, unless you take like a real big breath. Otherwise, like the breath goes kind of like normal. And in handstand, it should be quite a lot similar to that. But as with anything, if like let's say it like this: if your maximal hold in a handstand is 10 seconds, it's going to be hard for you to quote unquote relax and feel that you're breathing, because like if you have 10 seconds of handstand, that means that as soon as you get into your handstands, you're on your last 10 seconds. And if I stay up for as long as I can on my last 10 seconds, I'll be suffering too, and I probably won't be breathing very much. But if you can stay up for 30, like that's not going to happen until like maybe second 25 or so. Can you stay for a minute? It might not even happen at all, because like the forearms will give in perhaps before your midsection starts even moving very much.
Yeah, I never thought about that. Like, if you can only hold for 10 seconds, you're by definition on your last 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fucking
true.
Boom, genius. I need a fucking sound on my sound pad for that one. Hold on. Let's see, mic drop. No, wrong one. All right, well, fuck it, leave it. But yeah.
Emmet has bought way too much tech. This is what Emmet does. He likes to buy all the things, and now he's equipped, and now you need to listen to this fucking sound.
I know. I've been, it's coming. We're going to upgrade it. If anyone wants to buy me more tech, they can. I've been banned from buying stuff at the moment. Brain fart. Yeah, I just want to actually comment on the climbing and handstands. What I have spotted is climbing and handstands is a really good mix of training if you were to just do if you were to do climbing training, handstand training, and the associated flexibility training, you'd have a very, I don't want to say agile, but nimble body, something. You just have a very good training that is slightly out of the realms of our normal athletics, kind of like speed, power, everything has to be the fastest, best possible. Obviously, you want to get stronger and all these things and all stuff, but you're into a zone of kind of like mental challenging. There's always that kind of thing. I think the mindset of people who do climbing and bouldering is very compatible with the mindset of people who do handstands. There's a problem here to be solved, and there's a challenge.
It's problem solving.
And you get to upgrade and you get to level up. And then you go, oh, and then there's new stuff I can do, and then there's new things to solve and this kind of thing. So it works very well. And as you kind of spotted here saying, it's like, oh, it's fix my climber shouldering. Why? Because you're always pulling and climbing. You're always kind of pulling towards the body, or the body is pulling towards the wall. Whereas handstand, we're always pushing the body away from the floor. So it's like on the basics of basic rules of like so strength and conditioning, or strength training is balance your movement planes to a certain degree. And that kind of provides the balance to it. So it's kind of, yeah. The only risk is tendonitis, forearm fuckery, as we will call it. You know, just it can be creep up quite quickly if you're doing both climbing and handstands. But if you can avoid it, you are sorted. Cool. So there's a question actually last week that I want to get your input on, because it kind of stumped me on how you would describe this. I gave my answer, but I want to get your answer for people out there.
Sure.
So, I know there is the exercise of toe pulls when dropping into underbalance. What I have difficulties explaining to beginners is how to correct underbalance. In overbalance, it's just pushing the fingers into the ground, but with underbalance, I'm not sure how to describe the motion that corrects it. I can't remember myself how I did it in the beginning, and right now it seems too far of the way I do it to explain to beginners. So to put context in, this is, if you remember, Fernando, who can do one arms and presses and all that stuff.
Okay.
So just context. Yeah.
Underbalance, it's complicated because if it's done well, you don't really see it. And I mean, ideally, since like you don't have fingers on the heel side of your hand, which means that like you can't really do much in the hand to help yourself if the weight moves to the heel of the hand. So if the weight moves to the heel of the hand, I mean, the body is like any movement in the body will ripple through, and as the weight moves to the heel of your hand, like your center of mass, your hip will start moving also towards the heel of your hand, and at one point it will be unsavable and there'll be nothing you can do. So like what you do like can be roughly separated into 3 categories. So it's the hand balancing way, as I call it, which is basically as the weight moves to the heel of the palm, you keep the shoulder stack as it's always been. So you keep the pressure through the traps, and the weight moves to the heel of your palm. And like the first couple of things you might see when it's very little of this that happens are just like a very like micro pike in the feet, or like in the legs, or perhaps even that the legs just separate slightly. That you can very often see with people that are quite good, that like you'll just see one foot coming a little bit in front of the other foot. And that happens as the hip kind of then like also micro corrects in the other direction to kind of create a ripple that reestablishes the balance over the hand. So if this is done in a larger degree, it can lead into like a larger pike in the hips, a tuck. Like a good way to think of it is like if you've ever done like a tuck jump to handstand, and you do the tuck jump, but you don't make it all the way up. So you go to kind of a little bit of a high tuck. You didn't really make it. The tuck rolls a little bit down again, but you stop it, and then you lift it all the way back to handstand. So at that point, when the tuck rolls a little bit down again, your shoulders move slightly forwards, just to a little degree in relation to how much your legs roll back down. And then like you find the control there, you push the shoulders underneath your structure fully, and then you raise the legs on top. So this procedure is kind of complicated in all of its its parts, but it is probably the most noticeable with the straddle. So, and this is the perfect example. Like someone does the legs together, one arm, they make a mess. First thing they do is they throw their legs open quickly to reestablish balance, because you're lowering the center of mass, which allows you then to mitigate that movement towards the heel of the palm by a drastic drop in the center of mass, rather than by like excessive piking, for example. Now, the other methods that you can also use is basically planching your shoulders, like you on purpose or by reaction move the shoulder forwards. So you break the shoulder line and enter into a micro planche. This is kind of common with a lot of people that train gymnastics. Since in gymnastics, like you lose points if you pike and so on at the hips. Sure, you will probably lose points by moving the shoulders too much too, but I've just seen this as be a preferred method for many gymnasts.
Yeah.
Or you can also bend your arms very slightly. This is a common one among people who are strong with barbells or have a lot of strength when they learn their handstands. You'll see kind of that they end up doing these like micro bends in the arms all the time. And this is like these kind of movements is the body's response to handling the underbalance. So what I find interesting is that most of the people that I've taught and developed underbalance with is more like you give them drills to develop the strength capacity and like the understanding of how this moves in underbalance, and slowly but surely you start to see it. Like they kick up to handstand, their legs are like they kick up to handstand, their legs are slightly separated, and you see these kind of like small movements back and forth in the legs from over and under balance. And these are like the first kind of like the body's first kind of touch and taste at trying to control this movement. And then over time, it basically refines until you're able to like then use your preferred methods. With more efficiency.
Yeah, that's kind of how I explain it. I suppose it's like it is just, it's a familiarity thing. It's kind of like overbalance is easy. It's very easy to explain. Grab the ground, squeeze. Underbalance is more like it's intuitive because the way people solve it will be different.
Yeah, definitely.
It's kind of it's that, as I said in the podcast last week. It's like when you start hand balance, your battle is with overbalance. Once you learn to overbalance, you never really need, you can just do it. You can forget about thinking about it too much. But then your battle will always be with underbalance.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. On one arms, it's never really with overbalance once you're good at it.
Yeah.
But it's like, I think the problem with understanding underbalance is that like you will see it only when only in the reactions. So
yeah,
you'll only see it as the body kind of makes a movement to try to handle it, and those are those kind of small ripples where the shoulder will move slightly forwards, kind of in this jerky way, and then the hips may or may not react to make sure that you don't need to planche very far, and those small ripples are what causes the body to or like when the shoulders make that tiny movement forwards, that's where you can reestablish a center of mass over you and kind of find it back more easily.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that's like, if we think of where the balance point is the hand, it's always a bit closer to the wrist than it is to the fingertips. So you can make bigger, more dramatic saves almost in a straight handstand when you go towards fingertips. So you can really open it out. You can really catch it that way because you have this kind of lean. Whereas with underbalance, it is that kind of, as you're saying, just like shoulders go forward, but it might be they'll go forward 5 to 6 millimeters, and that will reestablish the center mass of the hands. But obviously, you need precision to be able to do that.
Yeah. So. Yeah, and also on the fingers, it's like, what was it Helgi called it? That you apply torque to the bottom of the inverted pendulum.
Yeah.
I think that is relevant since you're like actually applying force to the bottom of the entire pendulum, whereas when with underbalance, you have to move the structure slightly on top of it because you have nothing to grab the ground with there. Even if you try to keep pushing into the floor with the heel, all you can do is making sure that your shoulder is where it needs to, but the reactions still need to happen further up there in the chain to be able to actually keep yourself over the hand.
Maybe we need to come up with the underbalancer riser 4000, where it's like a stabilizer for your hand that catches underbalance for you. You had
similar to a shake weight, but for handstands.
Basically, we could do a shake weight in handstands. If someone has a shake weight and manages to use it while in a handstand and send me a video, I'll hook you up with a healthy discount to a Handstand Factory program. I'm just going to throw that out now. If someone sends it, it has to be using it properly, not just holding it in your legs. I want to see that thing shake weighting.
I'm for that.
Yeah, I'll hook you up with a very healthy discount to any one of our programs if you send that in to me. Yeah. Anyway, where are we at? There's some point. Yeah, the handstand riser, because if we think about like this one that some people probably played around with, where you rest the wrist, the base of the wrist, or anywhere below the elbow, against some supports to catch underbalance when you're learning. And it's one of those ones that's very good for some people, and other people just like would pay not to do that exercise in the program. I used to use it a lot, but I use it much less now because basically people are just like, no, I'm never doing it again. It's terrible. But if you had a kind of stilt that would fall out as you broke the angle and just stop you, and then you could recorrect, I think we could put that on Kickstarter and make a fortune.
Sort of spring-loaded mechanism.
Yeah, it's not even spring-loaded. So it hangs down by your wrist. But then when you lean angle in the underbalance way, it'll kind of swing out and put a brake on.
Yeah, and like I was thinking like years ago of creating some sort of glove with fingers on the other side, and like have some sort of like sensor system where as you squeezed with the hand, you would also squeeze with the other hand, the backhand. So you could control both over and under balance just by one squeeze.
Yeah.
Ultimate cheater.
Be interesting. Yeah, I'm down. I think we should kickstart this. Anyone who does mechanical engineering wants to get in on Kickstarter, you know,
we'll get a healthy discount to the program.
Do all the work. We'll give you a healthy discount. By healthy, I mean 12%. Healthy for us, not for you. Okay, I've got your favorite question, and I saved this one for you. Or did I answer it? I can't remember. It doesn't matter. You're going to answer it, and I know you like this question because I know you've been doing some tough internet sleuthing on this one before. So, why is training immediately after rest days so controversial? Brackets, a lot of people say worse with handstands, when any other sport/discipline benefits when training right after rest days.
You tell me. No idea. I at least have harder time after rest days. Seems like a lot of people do too. I did some modest sample size, but I did kind of a thing on my story once on Instagram asking like how people would feel after having rest days from their handstand. And I think the three categories were like feeling good, meaning that you were above average. Then there was like completely average, as if nothing has happened. Then it was feeling a little bit off. And then the fourth category was feeling like being Jabba the Hutt getting choked to death by Princess Leia, I think. And so I really don't know. I think that there's many various factors that can have to do with it. I know people that feel much better after rest days as well. But me personally, I always feel that like I have a hard time just quote unquote feeling my body in handstand after days off. And like one bro science theory I've had on it is just like, since it's balancing, and particularly one arm handstands is very kind of fast twitch balancing, as particularly when you move your legs on one arm, like you're going to make like countless tiny mistakes per second, and like your rotator cuff muscles need to quickly twitch and fix this stuff to be able to stabilize you. And one thing I've been thinking about is just like if you have just lower residue tension in your muscles after you've had rest days, so that like your tonus might be slightly lower, maybe that's a thing. But like then again, I don't really know anything about that actual physiology, but that's just one of the things I've thought of, since it's to me it's very noticeable. And like I've seen so also with others on rather high level, and it does seem to be more of a thing with people that work on quite advanced like one arm stuff compared to the general two arm game. And the general two arm game is much more linear, and like you just like if you have the necessary power output in your forearms and shoulders, you can rough out the handstand. Whereas with one arms, it's much more kind of fiddly. So I'm really not sure what causes this. And I mean, I'm very happy if people are able to train just as well after rest days. But like to me, at least, it seems like, or my personal experience is that it's definitely harder on those days. But then again, it's just, if you don't rest, like my experience is that I need rest days to be able to have any kind of rising curve in my practice. Like if I'm going to improve at something and I don't rest, like I'll just stay more or less at the same level, and I will assume that my injury risk is also elevated. Whereas like taking days off, maybe there'll be more fluctuations on the curve in the short term, but like it'll actually move upwards in the long term.
Yeah, it's definitely it's always one of these things. I think I have some thoughts on it where it's like, it's always, because handstands are so precise, particularly when you're getting more and more advanced, if your precision is kind of just slightly off, you'll know all about it. And that's where, like, this is the kind of thing, say for you who has quite big swings, like I know obviously I'm around you a lot and watch you train, who has quite big swings on rest days and non-rest days and train, not train and all this, it's kind of interesting to watch, because like now I can tell when you're off when you're doing basics. But before, when you'd come in and you'd be like, oh, rest day, I'm in the garbage, you'd still be doing quite high level stuff. And I'd be like, well, then our first scene is like, okay, I'm dealing with a different specimen here when he's like in the garbage, and I just pulled some figas on the floor. I'm like, okay. But then it's just like, well, because your precision is so high, if you're operating at 80% precision, which still means like, okay, I'm doing pretty advanced one arms, it's still just for you, you're like, oh shit, it's like, you know, the car isn't finding gear properly, or just this kind of thing. So it's kind of interesting. I think it's because I think there is kind of two strands of balancers, or maybe there isn't. There's ones who kind of have this narrow focus on infinite precision. Not that everyone doesn't work precise, but are very tuned to the sensations of precision. And they're the ones I kind of find like reactive balancers. Obviously, all balance is reactive, but more, you're not proactively trying to force the balance. It's kind of weird. And then there's other people who are a bit more like, they'll force the balance. You see this on canes more than anything else. So the balance is like, they're in direct, like, okay, I'm fighting for it before the fight has begun. And that can kind of rely on, you'll see this more in smaller people as well. Like particularly on canes. It's like, okay, I can just fucking grab it, lock everything into place to a certain degree, and then it just stays. Whereas some other people are just like, okay, I'm just going to deal with the chaos as it comes to me.
Yeah, I mean, some are kind of more chilling it a bit, like when in the terms of like not being as how could you say it, or basically allowing more chaos, perhaps, or like kind of allowing it to wobble more, while some are very much like just like roughing it out in one certain spot. I think this has a lot to do with just like training styles and like fields of interest within the balancing is to do as well. But I find particularly that like reacting to movements is what's hard after days off to me. Like going to the toughest positions will feel off, and like holding and doing the basics usually feel fine, but like I just like the things that are maybe the furthest out in terms of angles feel much less accessible after I've had days off. So yeah, it's certainly individual, but definitely a factor for quite many. And I don't really have any explanation as to why, except that, there's actually one other analogy I have for this, which is also may or may not have any relevance. And that is that since we're working with balance, and we're working with strength, and we're working with precise setups. So I was thinking about, like, let us say that you take an equivalent thing for leg sports, such as like a high, some sort of sprinter or someone doing squats or whatever. You will walk on your legs every single day. Like, you will use the balancing organs on your legs every single day, and you have used them your entire life. So the amount of hours you've been on your legs and developing the balance on your legs is a ridiculous amount. So if you would find the equivalent, if you would find, like, let's say that I've been on my, just take stupid numbers, I've been on my hands for 1,000 hours, but I've been on my feet for like 15,000 hours or whatever the hell it would be. Then like, if I take 1 day off from my hands, like, how many days would that equate to take off from being on your legs at all, if you're following my drift? And if you'd ask, like, a top sprinter to take that, like, literally not walk for X days before doing a sprint, it would probably...
You just knocked your mic off.
Now I'm back, I think.
You're back, yeah.
Yes, I somehow muted it. Yeah, but I was just thinking that, like, if there could be in any way, shape, or form some sort of comparison there, since, like, we haven't been on our arms for that many hours, so both were working with a biomechanical structure that is worse to balance on than the legs, but we also just haven't spent that many hours on arms whatsoever. And hence then removing a day or removing a week from the balancing practice might then feel very off for a short amount of time before getting back into it. So yeah, that's just like another thought I've had about it, but I don't quote me on this, because, like, this is very hard to know.
This is going on to the podcast. Mikael says if you miss 1 day of walking on your legs and make up for walking on your hands, you'll gain infinite handstand skills.
He says it has been spoken.
Kind of describes the Chinese technique for doing handstands and hand balance training, particularly with the kids. It's just like, technique, what is that? Just do handstands. Just keep doing handstands. Start young enough. Yeah, start young enough. Start at age 4. Just do an hour of handstands against the wall as your warm up, and then just do 200 presses to handstand. Repeat that for 30 years, and suddenly you're a fucking machine.
It's like, oh, I wonder how it could happen.
Yeah. I can just do everything on one arm, and it's not even my thing. So that brings us to the end of the questions, and I am going to let a wrecked Mikael sign off, I think.
Oh, yes.
Get some sleep.
Grand.
Yeah, grand. Yeah, it's good to have you back on the show. I hope everyone's was sick of me.
Great.
Don't be sick of me. Please don't. Anyway, so we have been the Handstandcast. If you would like to support our Handstandcast, you could buy us a coffee at our Buy Me a Coffee link, or you could buy one of our programs at handstandfactory.com, where you can find out all the actual practical stuff we actually teach rather than rambling. Other than that, I've been Emmet, that's Mikael, and we'll see you next week.